Hello everybody, in today's video I'm going to be showing you a picnic. It's a 4D picnic basket. It's got a little picnic blanket out, it's got watermelon and all kinds of good stuff that are just perfect for a picnic, including a pie. I personally have never taken a pie on a picnic, but it seems like one of those classic things that you just think of. So I hope you love this one as much as I do. It just makes me think of warm weather, and we still are not having warm weather. It snowed a few days ago, so I'm really unimpressed by that, and I want to go on a picnic so bad. So this little nail is like my little pretending getting to go on a picnic and having sun, which hopefully we get someday. I hope you love it as much as I do, and don't forget to click subscribe to all my future videos as well. To begin this design, we want it to look like it has a grassy, lovely patch of beautiful outdoors that we're going to be having our picnic on. So I'm going to use a green glitter mix that looks a lot like grass color, and the glitter is such a fine, perfect mix that it really gives you that essence of grass. So after we have that layer of green down, we're going to be encapsulating it with a layer of clear acrylic to make sure that we protect those little tiny glitter particles from being filed into oblivion. After that all has been cured, we're going to file the nail into shape with our e-file. Once that is done, you can set this nail to the side and start making all of your little artsy pieces. On a piece of scratch paper, I'm going to be making a template for my basket. So we got to have 3 of those first sides that I made, despite the fact that originally I wrote 2. So we're going to make 3 of those rectangles, 2 of the square, and then you have to make the handle piece that is a little bit like a widened C shape or so. And then after you have that done, you can lay your nail form backing on top of it, and you can sculpt all of those pieces that you need with whatever color you want your basket to be. I'm going to make just like a typical woven basket color, so I'm going to use it's kind of a neutral tan brown color, and I'm going to be sculpting all of those pieces of the basket. As you're sculpting these on the nail form backing, you will hopefully be able to see your template through the nail form backing easily. Depending on the brand of nail form backing, some of them are a little bit easier to see the template through than others. And also some of them, the acrylic comes off easier than others. I've noticed this as I've been doing different, using some different brands of forms when I was testing them out, especially during my stint on NTNA. You're also going to need to make a 4th one of those original rectangle shapes that you're going to cut in half. So after you sculpt it out, I just took a craft blade, dipped into some acrylic powder, and I just made a slice right down the middle. That's for the top of the basket that is going to have the sides that open and lift up, and one of them is actually going to be lifting up, so don't forget to make that little division in there so that you can have a basket that opens. If you don't want to make it opening, you can just either have it permanently open or permanently closed. You don't have to do the hinge if that isn't your thing. You do need to make those 2 side pieces. So for the 4 original rectangles that I just sculpted, they're for the sides, the top and the bottom, and then those 2 squares are for the ends. Then there's the handle of our little picnic basket. And then after we have all of these pieces sculpted and they have been cured, they're very hard, they're not going to be bendy, you can start gluing them together. So use some nail glue and very carefully hold and glue these pieces together. I would highly recommend employing the use of some tweezers. If you have some offset tweezers, those are my favorite ones to use. I think they are just a little more ergonomic, a little bit more comfortable to use in comparison to just a straight-sided tweezers. If you are going to use a straight-sided tweezers, ones that are pointy are better than ones that have an angled flat side on them. Those angled flat side ones are the best for pulling out unwanted hair if you have any hairs that pop up somewhere. But for anything nail art related, I just don't prefer those. After we're got a lot of our little pieces glued on, the one side of the top of my basket I am going to be gluing down so that only one side will open. If you want both sides to open, that would be a whole nother fiasco, but don't glue that piece down. You want to leave that top open all the way. Then we're going to glue the other end down, and now that we have all of these pieces, obviously there's a little bit of gapping here and there that you can see. I'm not too worried about that. It's not a big deal, but go through and with the same color that you use to sculpt the pieces for your basket, you're going to want to fill in all of those seams that we've created. So any place that you glued something together, you're going to want to just smooth it out, fill in any gaps or spaces that there are, and just make sure that everything is very sturdy and very durable. If you didn't go through and secure everything together like this with more of the acrylic, it might hold for a little while, and then all of a sudden it would get bumped just the wrong way and all of the pieces would fall apart, which would be no fun at all. It'd be very upsetting, especially if you're me and you were like almost done with it or all the way done and you were like showing somebody. That would be the time when things would break. It's always when you're showing it to somebody. I always make sure before I show anybody any of my work, I get all of the final pictures taken and all the final videos done, so that if I were to accidentally drop something or break something or step on it, or you never know, I'm kind of a klutzy person, that it's all been photographed and finished off, because if anybody's gonna break it, it's gonna be me. One time I was showing my mom a design where there was a magnetic piece that came off so that you had like, it was two styles, something that was the magnetic piece and then without. And as I was showing her, I dropped that piece and it fell down the crack of the couch and I never got it back and I had to start that over and I was unimpressed. Let me tell you. Once you're done though, and you've got your whole little basket secured together, you're going to want to file a groove or a little notch away from the top of the basket where you're going to have your hinge. If your basket is going to be permanently open, you will not have to do that step. You'll just glue that other flap of the top of the basket in place. Otherwise, if you do want to make a little hinge, take a tiny piece of wire, string a bead through the wire, and then set that in the groove that you just made. It may want to fall into the basket. It may take a couple tries of just getting it in the place. And then after you have it in place, come on camera, you got this. There we go. You're going to want to take some more of your basket color acrylic and you're going to go up and over the ends of the wire without touching the bead. If you accidentally get any of the acrylic on the bead where it will, set and it'll hold it in place, then your basket will not open. You want your basket to open, so you want that bead to remain very, very mobile. So don't get the acrylic on it. If you're using any nail glue in the attaching of that little hinge, make sure that you don't touch nail glue to it either. After that's been done, I'm going to attach the handle of my basket with some nail glue, just temporarily having the nail glue hold that in place. Once that has dried enough where I'm not worried about getting wet glue on my acrylic brush, I'm going to secure the handle of the basket to the basket, just like so. If you have little tiny bits of wire sticking out the end of your hinge like I do, feel free after all of that acrylic has been fully set where you're not worried about anything breaking to cut them off. I'm going to take a touch of nail glue, just the smallest amount possible, and I'm going to glue the other side of the lid of my basket to the bead. So one side of the basket is attached to the wire, the other side of the basket, or the opening flap of the basket, is attached to the bead. So one is the wire, one is the bead, and don't get anything attached to the wrong part. If you want to know more about hinges specifically in a very in-depth video on hinges, it's Hinges 101, I can put a link to a live class in the description box below that really goes into all the information you will need to successfully make hinges for nail art. So I'll put that link below. If you haven't watched it and it's something you'd be interested in, I highly recommend it just because there are so many little things that you might not think about that it'd just be good to kind of get them all out and get all the knowledge you can possibly before you get started on making something like that. Back to a nail form backing. I am making 3 triangles, sort of triangles, they don't have to be perfect, of a bright pinky coral color acrylic. These are for some slices of watermelon. I'm going to take a slightly darker shade of that same sort of reddish pink color, and I'm going to be adding a little bit of a shadow on the one side of each triangle. Sort of blending it up. It doesn't have to be a smooth ombre, just kind of get a little bit of a secondary color in. Then on that side, we're also going to be adding some white. So it's the bright shade, then a darker shade, and then white. And then if you're familiar with the way a watermelon looks, you're probably going to be able to guess the next color. We're going to be adding some green to the other end, or on the other side of the white. So we've got that little ring of the white bit of the watermelon slice, and then you're going to go through with a bright green or a dark green or whatever kind of green you want to use for your watermelon. There are so many varieties of watermelon that pretty much any green you use is gonna look right because there's so many different varieties. Has anybody ever had one of the orange watermelons? I saw an orange watermelon seeds at the hardware store the other day and I was really tempted to get them. Not that I could actually grow them. My ability to actually get things to grow is somewhat not very successful, but I saw them and I was very tempted because I'd like to know how those are. But we've got a little bit of green and then we're going to be adding some darker green. Again, whatever kind of watermelon you want to make as far as the coloration of the rind goes is perfectly fine. Once you've got all of those little watermelon bits done, then you can go through and you can make something else. So there's so many different options of what you can make as far as the food for your picnic. I'm doing a sandwich, watermelon slices, and a slice of pie, which sounds like a beautiful lunch if you ask me, especially the watermelon. I've been so hungry for good watermelon and I haven't, winter food, hopefully spring food comes in pretty soon. But these are just the things that kind of are the classics, or what I consider to be classics as far as picnic food. For the sandwich, you can make different kinds of fillings for it. There's different kinds of bread. I'm doing just a regular sandwich bread, but you could make like a French loaf or something a little bit fancier if you were so inclined. And you can make different kinds of filling if you wanted to and go really all out on this. You can make different kinds of sandwiches. You can make a couple different flavors of sandwich per se. If you want to do just like I did, so I started out by making the 2 slices of the bread, basic bread shape, doesn't have to be anything too fancy if you don't want it to be. And I'm going to take a darker shade of brown. I'm going to go just around the very edge of it and make a little bit of the crust. This, I feel like, gets across the idea of a sandwich the easiest compared to some of those other fancier types of bread. Obviously, if you want to go through and do it that way, you certainly could, but I just think there's something so immediately recognizable about sandwich bread. Then I'm going to take some red acrylic and I'm going to be making some slices of tomato. I'm going to do 3 of them. Remember, when you're sculpting these things, they're going to be seen from the edge and not from the top. So if you don't want to do anything fancy to the top of them, don't. And even if you do want to do something fancy to the top of them, it's for the most part just going to be wasted because you won't see it anyway. So keep it pretty simple, no detailing really required here. After you have your slices of tomato sliced, then I'm going to flip over one of the pieces of the bread that I sculpted, and I'm going to pick up those slices of tomato and I'm going to attach them with some clear acrylic onto my slice of bread. These things are so teeny tiny to be working with that if you are trying to just do it with your fingers, it may get a little clumsy. So you may want to grab that tweezers you're using for your basket and bring them back over to really get them in place. After we have those little slices, I'm going to grab some yellow acrylic and I'm going to be making my slices of cheese. This is not the right shade of yellow, mind you. It's just the one that I had easily accessible and I didn't have to mix. If you have a better cheese color yellow acrylic, certainly use that instead of the pale yellow that I'm using. But it works. Again, we're just trying to get the general idea of of a sandwich. So I'm going to be placing those cheese slices down with some of it hanging over the edges. If you want everything to be seen, you have to kind of stagger it so that different parts are hanging down over the sides. And then I'm going to grab some bright green acrylic and I'm going to be making some lettuce. Very basic sandwich mixings. You could do like a burger if you wanted to do that too. There's just so many different options of what you want to do for your picnic food. I know for me, usually when we ever go on a picnic, we always just go and get some food, some to-go food from someplace, and we bring that on our picnic, and I don't actually prepare picnic food. So if you're actually somebody that prepares food for a picnic and you make it, then you might have some better ideas than I did as far as what you'd want to do. I didn't think a to-go container would be the best thing to be shown taking out of the picnic basket. So we're going to make a couple more slices of lettuce to add to this. And then after you have all of these little bits done, you've got all of your fillings in there, you're going to the last thing you need to do is just put your other slice of bread on top. If your lettuce or whatever, the last thing that you made is wet enough where the top will stick, you can just set it right on top. Otherwise, a little bit of clear acrylic and then press the top of the sandwich down. And that's all you got to do. And you have a cute little sandwich. After that's been done, the last little piece I'm going to be making for this right now is I'm going to be making a pie. So I'm going to take whatever color I want for the filling of my pie. For me, it's going to be like a dark berry type of a color, something like a strawberry rhubarb pie, which is one of my favorites. I'm going to make a circle. I'm going to touch it up, just kind of pull it in a little bit from side to side, but you're making just a circular disc of that color of acrylic. Once you have that done, you're going to take a bit more of that color and you're going to just build it up slightly in the center so it has a nice dome shape to it. Don't worry about the underneath part of where the pan of the pie is going to be. We're going to do that later. The first thing we're doing is just trying to get that first basic top of the pie done. Then after you have that, you're going to flip it over once it's been cured and you're going to add the pan of the pie to the bottom. So you're going to grab some silver acrylic and you're going to just sort of add a nice, pretty thick layer to that, flatten out the bottom, and then add an angle to the sides. And if there's a little bit of a lining, like a texture line from your brush that ends up on the tin of the pan or the tin of the pie, that's fine because a lot of times I do have a little bit of that pleating around the outside edge. So just kind of work on it however it works out. After you have that done, flip this back over and then you get to add the crust. So depending on the type of pie you're making, it'll have a different style of crust. If you're making, say, a pumpkin pie that doesn't have a top crust, then you won't have to do anything besides this first little ripple of crust around the outside edge. If the type of pie you're making has an upper crust as well, then you're going to have to add first this ring going around the outside, and then however you want to fashion your upper crust, you can go ahead and do that. It'd be really cool if you did a lattice type of a style of crust. That's something that would be really fun. Otherwise, if you want to do like I did and just basically cover the top of the pie with your crust color and then make a little bit of a slit here and there. I did 3 little slits in the middle. That's another very typical way that pies are crusted. So that would be a different option for you, however you prefer. I'm going to then take a little bit of white acrylic on a nail form backing and I'm going to pat that out into a nice, really flat shape. I'm going to push the sides in to form as close to a square as I can. It doesn't have to be a perfect square, but just, a vague square type shape. just kind of straighten those sides out. Once it begins to turn matte where you can slide your brush underneath and pick it up, go ahead and do so, and you'll be able to see it. You can see it becomes a little less shiny. All of a sudden your brush will be able to slip underneath it. Once you do that, pull your nail over and place that little blanket down on the end of the nail. After that's been done, you're going to dilute some red paint and you're going to be making your gingham type of pattern across your little picnic blanket. If you don't want to do this type of a pattern, you can do whatever else you want. You could just have fun with it and just have a simple single colored blanket that you're going to be doing for a picnic. Or I just feel like this red tablecloth gingham is a classic picnic blanket type of a pattern. Then apply some matte top coat over the top of your blanket and you can attach your other pieces. So after you have the blanket done, you can add your picnic basket on there in the other corner, and then you can set out all of your food. So you can put your pie out, you can put your watermelon out, you can do however you want. Do make sure that you secure everything down with more of your clear acrylic, especially underneath some of those bigger pieces like the basket that would be easy to kind of get bumped and knocked off. So you want to make sure that those stay really secure and attached to the nail. I'm going to place the pie on top of the blanket. The pie is the best part. I mean, you know, really, that's just the best part of any picnic would be the dessert. So we've got the pie on the corner. You do have to decide what you want to be inside your picnic basket so that you don't all of a sudden set everything out on top of the blanket and then think, hey, I've got nothing to put in the basket. So I'm going to add the pie and then the watermelon and the sandwich, and I'm going to save some of the watermelon slices to put inside the basket in case we need some extra. Got the sandwich down, and on top for the watermelon, before I actually put them on top of the blanket, I'm going to sculpt a little plate. So with some white acrylic, I'm just going to make a little circle of that so that the watermelon isn't going to get all soaked up. The blanket's not going to get all soaked up with some watermelon juice because that would be kind of sticky. We're going to add that little slice of watermelon down, place that down with the tweezers, and then open up your basket, and you can kind of decide where you want to put those other two slices within the basket. I set them so that they were kind of facing up and out. But however you want, if you wanted to add a whole different element of what was in there as far as what's in the basket, you could put just one category and you could put all the watermelon in, or if you're making something else, you could put that in there. Something to drink, you could make a pitcher of lemonade for this little design. There's just so many cute little things that you could make that you could switch it up and really personalize it. When you're done with making all of those pieces and attaching them, then you can go through and do a little bit of detailing with acrylic paint. However much you want to do is however much you need to do. If you want to do a lot, you can go for it. Depending on the style of basket, you may want to add a little bit of a basket weave pattern to it, which I'm doing by just making crisscross lines. You can actually, if you wanted to, you could sculpt in the little crisscrossed basket weave pattern with your acrylic. That would be a lot of work, especially this is such a small scale that it would just take a lot of effort and a lot of teeny tiny little bits, but you could do it if you were so inclined. Otherwise, those little crisscross lines are just as effective, I think, especially when you're making something so small. You're going to want to do them across all the edges of your basket, so around the outside of the perimeter of the basket as well as the top of the lid, and then a little bit across the handle too. After you have all of those little lines done, you can add some detailing and some shading on your pie. You can I added the seeds to my watermelon before, and you can just finish off whatever you feel like needs it. After you've got all of your painting done and you're happy with the way everything looks all together, the last thing you're going to need to do is apply some top coat to this design. When you are top coating, especially around the basket with the hinge that opens up, you're going to want to make sure that you top coat it in one way and then let that dry if you're using an air dry top coat, and then top coat the inside. So if you do the whole outside, then let it make sure it dries and then do the inside. Some gel sealer over the background to really make sure that that green grass is so shiny and glittery, and then a little bit of gel sealer over the watermelon slices so that they do look wet and juicy, and then that's it. This design is done. It really gives me just those feelings of summer and spring and warm weather, which I am so looking forward to if I ever get some. I hope wherever you guys are, you're having some nice warm sunny days, and I will see you all next time. Bye!